I'm Megan, and I work with the Atlanta Urban Debate League. Today we're going to be talking about running the capitalism critique against the Genetics Aff. First, let's break down some key concepts. What is capitalism? Capitalism is an economic and political system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Central characteristics of capitalism focus on the underlying profit motive of systems and actions. Infinite growth is known as the growth imperative, and it's a theory proposed by Marx stating that capitalism can only sustain itself by infinite economic growth within a world of finite resources, also known as capital. Sustainability. Sustainability is a social goal for people to coexist on Earth over a long time. To get to sustainability, we need to make sure that capitalism doesn't kill the environment. Climate change. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Next, a recap. What is a critique? In the world of policy debate, a critique, which is German for critique, is an off-case philosophical argument that is used by the negative, and it questions the fundamental assumptions that the affirmative makes. Rather than providing a direct response to the affirmative's policy proposals, critiques analyze systems society operates under and demonstrates the negative impacts of these systems, how the affirmative relates to those systems, and what to do in order to dismantle those systems. Structure of a critique. First, we'll have the link, which demonstrates how the affirmative's resolution or plan makes problematic assumptions about society and how this presents a flawed mindset. Next, we'll have the impact, which provides the ultimate negative consequences of the problematic assumptions the affirmative has made. This is often a societal issue or a system rather than a single bad thing that happens. Alternative. The alternative suggests a different worldview that resolves the problematic assumptions the negative is critiquing. First, we'll talk about the link that is specific to the genetic dissad. This is the Hull 2024 card, and it establishes how the affirmative's plan links to the ultimate negative consequences of the capitalism critique, which is the impact. And then Hull accomplishes this by arguing that intellectual property rights are used to commodify things or reduce them to something that is bought and sold. Since the affirmative's plan is to establish property rights for genetic material, this link card argues that the affirmative dehumanizes people because genetic property rights commodify human bodies, which means that this turns human beings and our bodies into marketable objects. This card also argues that the existence of intellectual property rights marks a drive to commodify all knowledge, and it uses examples of royalties, which means fees that are charged when someone uses a patented object, on common information such as the alphabet, algebra, the laws of physics, and the metric system in order to emphasize the necessity of limitations on copyright. So essentially what this means is that the last part of this card, this last line, talks about how it would be ridiculous for people to start having to pay money to a patenter every time they use things like the alphabet or laws of physics. It emphasizes that royalties shouldn't be charged on all information, and there should be a limit to what we patent. Next is the impact card, which is Rimmer 2015. This card describes the ultimate negative impact that will occur if capitalism is continued to be upheld. And specifically, this card argues that capitalism itself is the root cause of climate change and that it will lead to extinction. This card argues that intellectual property law provides research and development incentives into fossil fuels and polluting technologies, and it cites developments such as cars, planes, and the use of coal and oil to generate energy. These are major inventions of the last 2 centuries, and they are among leading contributors to the increase of CO2 levels. Finally, Rimmer 2015 frames copyright as a key prohibitor to developing countries' access to climate technology. Because the industry is closing itself off and hasn't developed enough, that means that developing countries have a lot of trouble with mitigating the effects of climate change because they have limited access to climate technology. We have the alternative card, which is Andrews 2019, and this card illustrates an alternative worldview that avoids the impacts of upholding capitalism. First, it does this by arguing that we should favor a worldview that seeks to abolish intellectual property entirely rather than attempting to reform it. Andrews also argues that the legal system prioritizes the needs of capitalist property owners and that we should challenge this idea of property in itself in order to lay the grounds for a more multi-pronged movement that can combat other existing institutions such as white male supremacy and inequality. Essentially, what this means is that by attacking other things than one specific area, such as intellectual rights for human bodies, this advocates for a more multi-layered movement that addresses society as a whole rather than specific parts of society. And this alternative better lays the groundwork for a more comprehensive resolution of inequality and opens up fields of research by abolishing the idea of intellectual property. Okay, that is the basics of how to run the capitalism critique against the Genetics Aff. Feel free to drop by the Digital Debate Center if you have any other questions or would like some clarifications. Thank you.